and welcome to episode 28 of Sarastro's Marvel Crisis Protocol painting series. In this video I'll be painting Red Skull from the new Earth's Mightiest Core Set of the Marvel Crisis Protocol miniatures game by Atomic Mass Games. Let's jump straight in. As usual, you can see I've primed the figure in black, followed with some zenithal highlights applied from above. I've also brightened up the cosmic cube with pure white, and on this occasion I've chosen to paint the base separately. I'm going to begin by painting the eyes using an off-white, and I've chosen white sands for this. If you want to keep things simple here, a single white dot in each eye actually looks fine. If you want to add pupils, however, we'll have to fill a little more space with the white. I'm now using some black to dot in the pupils, which I'm placing towards the top edge of each eye. And I'm also using this to carefully paint the surrounding area. Next I'm painting the teeth using Nacar, darkened with just a touch of black. And I'm now painting the skin using deep red, and I'll be leaving a nice bit of dark lining around the eyes. Next I've decided to paint the cosmic cube, where I'm first providing a fresh undercoat of pure white. I've then picked out a couple of blue tones and a light turquoise to begin adding some colour, and you could use whatever blues you like here. I'm starting with a mix of light ultramarine and primary blue, which I've thinned down a fair bit. And I'm applying this quite freely, pushing the paint around to create some cloudy textures, but generally growing a little darker towards the edges. I'm now applying some thinned turquoise blue to achieve a little variation. Next I'm mixing in some white and using this to add some additional swirly textures. I'm also sharply defining the edges, and I want the paint to be quite opaque for this. I'm now just going back and forth a bit until I'm happy with the general look. The white here can be quite diffuse, but we can also add some little lines like lightning. I might do some final tweaking here later on, but next I'm going to paint the black leather. To add a subtle bit of colour interest to the black, I've chosen to mix in some purple, and you could tint the black with pretty much any colour you like. I just wanted something that would provide some contrast with the blue light that would be coming from the cosmic cube. I'll then be bringing up the values with the addition of some white, and maybe some vanilla white for the brighter highlights. So here I'm mixing some purple into the black. And I'm now adding the white to create my initial midtones. You can see this produces quite a dark violet grey colour. I'm starting by thinning the off-black a fair bit to create some easy shading for the inner jacket and upper legs, where there are various folds and creases. I'll still be working over this when I add the highlights in a while. It's just a little easier if we can still see some of the forms and values showing through. I'm now returning to a more opaque consistency for the flatter areas, and here I'm blocking in the main values for the back and shoulders using my mid and shadow tones. I'm then using a damp brush to wet blend the transition, which just means using a series of short strokes to get the pigments to mix, creating a smoother gradation. I'm now continuing around the rest of the model, using the shadow and midtones from the palette to get all of the main values in place, and I don't mind if things look a little rough at this stage. Alternatively, you could provide a single flat base tone using the off-black, then highlight up in layers. This might give you a greater sense of control, but would take a fair bit longer. With the main shadow and midtones in place, we can now begin adding some more refined highlights on top. I'm also adding some dark lining along the way. For my brighter highlights, I'm also mixing in some white sands. I generally like to keep the brighter highlights quite tightly focused, especially when painting black. For the boots, I'm going to play with some higher contrast reflective patterns of light and shade to create more of a shiny impression. And here I'm just reinforcing one or two areas of shadow. For these large smooth areas at the back, I'm first mapping out my broad areas of highlight, taking care not to go too bright. Then a nice easy way to create some more attractive transitions is to simply add a layer of scratchy noise over the top. Next I'm going to add some pale blue tones that we use for the cosmic cube and begin adding some object source lighting to the right arm. I'm aiming for quite a restrained level of blue light since he's situated in daylight, but you could be as bold and over the top here as you like, or not bother with any object source lighting at all. I'm now gradually pushing the intensity of the blue, especially for the areas closest to the cube. I also want to sharpen this shadow to heighten the contrast. And these are my last few highlights for now. Next I'm going to highlight the skin, where I'm first mixing some Antares Red into the deep red base tone. And this is now pure Antares Red. I might go just a little thinner for the top of the head, where you'll often see me pulling the pigments up towards the brightest point, helping to achieve a smooth gradation in the process. It's worth building these highlights up in a couple of layers to maximise the intensity of the red, which is naturally somewhat translucent. For the brighter highlights, mixing in something like golden skin will do nicely. This is a very optional idea, but I've decided to use a cooler highlight tone for the right side of the face that's facing the cube, so here I'm just highlighting the left side for now. If you'd like to keep things simple, however, you could just use the same highlight tone for the whole face. So for the right side of the face, I'm going to be adding some white along with some Adriatic Blue. I'm adding the white first to lighten and desaturate the red and avoid descending up with a dark purple. I'm then adding some of the blue to achieve a lilac tone. You can see this has a similar level to the other highlight colour, but is just a shade cooler. I'm not after anything dramatic here, just a subtle shift in tone to add interest. I'm now gently pushing the levels for both the warm and cold highlights. This is about as bright as I'd like to go. I'm now using the bluish tones for the right hand, but going a lot brighter due to the proximity of the light source. I also wanted to capture the idea of light spilling out between the fingers. I'll be making some final tweaks here in a while. Next I'm using the same basic red tones to paint the arm patch that we used for the face. I'm now moving on to the small metallic details, where I've chosen to start with quite a warm shadow tone, using a mix of earth green and titanium grey. I'll then be lightening this with some white, along with a hint of blue to create a subtle shift in colour temperature. So here's my warm grey base tone. I'm also using this for the briefcase. I'm now mixing in some white to begin adding the highlights. And I'm gradually getting brighter in a few stages. Along the way, we can also mix in a hint of blue to create some additional contrast. The blue won't really register, but the subtle change in tone helps create a nice bit of sparkle. I'm approaching pure white for the brightest highlights. The same tones work well for the briefcase, where I'm being somewhat sketchy and introducing some noise and scratches along the way. I also decided to glaze a little of the blue on top. And I decided to mix some vanilla white into my white for my last few glints. I'm now gluing Red Skull onto the base, and I'm doing a little further general refining. I ended up going back and forth a bit with the reflections on the left leg. And I also decided to tone down the levels of blue on the right hand. I'm now gluing down some bits of newspaper and some urban scatter to the base, before providing my last couple of refinements. And this completes Red Skull. Thank you so much for joining me. I do hope you've enjoyed this return to the series. As always, you can find full paint and product lists in the video description, along with links to all of the places I can be found on social media, as well as the various music platforms. My sincerest thanks go to my amazing patrons for funding this work. If you'd like to support what I do, feel free to hit the Patreon link and pledge what you can. Join me again soon as we continue painting miniatures from Marvel Crisis Protocol. Happy painting!